Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm William Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of the Up Arrow Podcast, where I feature the best minds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and beyond as you up arrow your business and your personal life. Joining me today is Preston Rutherford, co-founder of Chubbies, scaled to a 9-figure exit in 2021, acquired by Solo Brands, fast followed by a 10-figure exit in 2021, and now he's full-time posting the absolute most amazing CMO, CFO conversations on X that I've been really enjoying, and so excited to have you on the show here today, Preston.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. What a hell of an intro that was.
Yeah. I know you're not full-time doing that, but it's one of those things where I see these and I'm like, man, this is so good.
Thank you.
I want to give a shout out. So a lot of times I'll shout out who introduced me to the guest. Nobody introduced me to you. It was just X and seeing this stuff. But I will give a shout out to my brother-in-law, Ryan Strauss, because he's the one who first introduced me to you guys. I think it was back in like 2013 or something. Bought me my first pair of Chubbies shorts. He's like, this brand is amazing. Like, you have to follow them. And so I've been a fan of you guys ever since. So Ryan Strauss, thanks for putting me in touch with Chubbies in the first place.
Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it.
We're going to get into some of the good stuff here. The main focus of the topic that I want to talk about is just brand versus direct response, because I see you talking about this a lot, and I almost call this the Achilles heel of advertising within e-commerce. So I want to dig into that. Before we jump into that real quick, I want to announce our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million and one that IPO'd. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. All right, that's it with the boring stuff. On to the good stuff.
Can I ask about
Please,
that?
Please, go for it. Yeah.
So can you talk? You can talk about those brands, I assume.
Some of them, yes. I mean, I can talk about things about them, but I maybe can't mention some of their names because some of the they're private acquisitions.
Sure. That's awesome though. Like, those stats are pretty compelling.
Thanks, man.
That's amazing. Like, how, wow, that's legit. Yeah. What can you say? And like, how did you help them?
Okay. The easiest way that I would explain a lot of this is simply coming down to exactly what you're talking about, helping them understand that it's like, the number one thing that I would come into a brand and say, hey, I'm probably going to lower your ROAS, but I'm going to increase your profit. Is that okay? That was my pitch, if that was the thing. And they're like, lower my ROAS? No, that's not okay. I was like, but wait a minute, let me show you what I mean by this. And that was the thing. And I think, so when I talked to a lot of other people in the advertising space, they weren't understanding P&Ls. They didn't understand whether or not what they were doing was actually driving EBITDA. So this is why I'm very excited about these conversations you've had, because I feel like I explain it maybe not in the best way. And then you take this into like this conversation between CMO versus CFO and stuff. And I'm like, you nailed it so well. And I just share your posts with people. And I'm like, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I mean.
Amazing. That's so crazy.
So
awesome.
when you get that set up right, it ends up being a lot easier to scale profitably, because now you're putting the money towards the right things. And so then you can take a brand very quickly from 10 million to 100 million. And now they're in a spot where they're saying, great, we're ready for acquisition. And so, and again, that looks very good for anybody who's going to acquire them. You're helping with the multiples and stuff like that. So
100%. Cool. Love it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to dig into that. Before we dig into that, I do want to have you give like a quick rundown of like the Chubbies story. I've read about it. I think it's a lot of fun, like the one-on-one selling at Stanford. But for anybody who's listening that doesn't know the story, which I think is wild if they don't, but I'm sure there are still people who don't know the story. So like, give me the rundown of it. It's like, this is how we started it and why.
Sure. So started by 4 friends at a college, and then brought to the world and ultimately grown into something that I think is a pretty cool, meaningful brand by this amazing team of folks. So, from the whole perspective of like, none of the credit goes to me. It's all to the team, and I'd say all to the other founders. But we started it late 2011. At the time, a couple things were different. One, Abercrombie was not cool. It is cool now. Not cool. It was like the worst. And that represented a lot of like men's fashion, right? Typified by can't sit with us kind of vibe, right? Got to look a certain way. I'm going to have my shirt off, stand at the door, right? Spray you with cologne, and have this horrible like elevator style house music just pulsating. but that's very much like what cool was
Uh-huh.
13 years ago, right? So that being number one, we wanted to effectively create something that was the opposite of that. Once we decided that men's tiny shorts was what we wanted to devote our lives to, which in and of itself was its own conversation of just trying to figure out, like, because we had been working for other people, you know what I mean? And like you're
Mm-hmm.
25, 26-ish, and you're like, my boss is an idiot. And
Yeah.
I don't want to work for someone else. So you have that whole rationalization or realization, pre-marriage, pre-mortgage, marriage and mortgage. So we had
Yeah.
a little
Yeah.
bit of an opportunity to just go for it and be responsible for our fate, basically, and be able to create something. So that
Mm-hmm.
was, we were all in this place where we were all in the same place in life. Entrepreneurs in search of a company, which was kind of like the way we think about it. But then focused in on this idea of, fashion. Two of the founders actually worked at Abercrombie in the Stanford Mall, which is kind of funny. And so got this like firsthand taste of like, this is not the vibe that I'm about. And then it also kind of seemed like there was a product gap too, right? At the time,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
it was long cargo shorts, right? That was
Mm-hmm.
what was cool. And all of it, like I played rugby in college, right? Shorter shorts. Two of the founders played soccer at Stanford, shorter shorts generally. Fourth founder spent a lot of time, military kid, but spent a lot of time growing up in Georgia, generally wear shorter shorts, right? So there was all this thing. And so there was this like, we weren't that articulate where we were like, there was a brand gap and a product gap, but something didn't exist that we thought could exist because we weren't necessarily being served by the status quo. Kind of felt like, well, if we need it, there got to be other people out there that need it. It wasn't like this super consulty like top down TAM analysis.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we want to make something for ourselves, and that was kind of the start of it. And then you mentioned like door to door sales, basically. Yeah, I mean, we just sold shorts out of our backpacks. We started selling to our
Yeah.
close friends, and then they told their friends. We'd be out at the park in San Francisco, and people would come up because you got this group of people having a great time, trying to be, fun and welcoming, just like who we were as people.
Mm-hmm.
And but we were in bright, tiny shorts, and so it was immediately notable and memorable and different. Some people
Mm-hmm.
hated it, some people loved it, and that felt great, because I think each of us came from an experience, a background where we worked on things that people didn't care about, but that
Mm-hmm.
people, that we were devoting our lives to. So it was like, dude, next thing I do, I want it to be a physical product where I can hand it to someone, I can see their face light up, and they
Yeah.
give me money for it right away. But that being less important, what more important is I create something that people care about, and I'm okay if people hate it. It's never fun, but I don't want apathy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so those are some of the core things that kind of brought us together and got us to start the thing in the first place.
I love that you said you don't want apathy. I've heard it said that some people say hate is the opposite of love. And I forget who told me this, but it was one of my mentors when I was younger. It's like, no, no, no. Apathy is the opposite of love, right? Like if
Mm,
you hate something or someone, even let's just say that's because you care so much about their opinion or whatever. Like if there's arguing or whatever going on, then the relationship is still salvageable. When somebody's apathetic, there's no more opportunity for the
yeah.
relationship. And so I love that idea. It's like, no, no apathy. It's like, how do we do something that people either love or hate?
Yeah, something to, because yeah, that's a great way to frame it. I actually really like that, right? Because the hate is because you had an impact,
Mm-hmm.
you've had an
Mm-hmm.
impact, and then the second piece, and one of the ways that I used to think about it is that there's something that's definable to then hate. You know, when
Mm,
when there's
mhm,
apathy, right? It's just sort of like I don't know what I have nothing to react to, and therefore I can't articulate any kind of opposition because I don't know what to oppose. So having something that is then clear idea, clear set of just a clearly understandable thing, um, is kind of like the other component. But I really love that idea of like apathy, the opposite of hate. Um, that's dope.
so, okay, now, one of the things that really got me to love your brand at the time, I don't even think I was in marketing at the time. I'm trying to think, 2013. I maybe had just started into marketing. Um, is your emails and your marketing was very irreverent and almost like seemingly unpolished, but unpolished on purpose to a point where it was like the coupon code might be like, this is our 20% off coupon code, use it now. And it's like this one big long word, like things like this. How did that come to be like the thing that you're like, hey, let's just go ahead and do this as opposed to like, let's just do what we're supposed to do?
I'd say three things maybe. One is we wanted to do things that just felt great to us as people.
Mm,
And part of that was rooted in this idea that we're sitting in this 9 to 5, although it wasn't 9 to 5, right? We were working, I don't know, like 8 to 8, early days out of school trying to make it. We graduated in '08, right? So times were
mm-hmm,
different. It was like a stressful time, hard to get jobs. Working a ton. Some of our favorite things during that time, like where respite was like the funny email thread you have with your friends. Maybe you're planning a
mm-hmm,
trip or events coming up, whatever it might be. And then it turns into this thing where you start razzing each other, right? You send memes, you send funny jokes, you say funny things. And those were just fun, It would
yeah,
just be like this nice little break from the boss being like, give me your TPS report or whatever. And so that being one
yeah,
thing is we wanted it to
yeah,
feel like the best writing that you consumed, basically, which was like these text threads or these email threads
mm-hmm,
or just great, funny content, but feeling like it was from your buddies, like that we were
mm-hmm,
insiders, we were a group of friends, right? That was like one of the foundational premises of how we wanted everything to feel, that like we're all buddies. We're not a
mm-hmm,
company selling to customers. We're just a group of friends and we just want this thing to exist, right? We all want it to exist, so let's just make it. And but we're friends. You're like me, I'm like you, but we are buddies.
mm-hmm.
And that idea kind of permeated everything we do. Where I would never write an email that comes from some business to my buddy. I would never text that to my friend. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
when you put it through that
Yep.
kind of a filter, you're like, that's absurd that
Yeah.
you would just like check this box
Mm,
of, well, I wrote an email. I mean, people will see through that shit. You know what I mean? So
mm-hmm,
it was kind of obvious that it should feel different. And that the second thing is like, we need to earn your time. You're giving us time by opening our email. You need to then have a positive association built up with that action that you just took.
mm-hmm,
You're not going to get a
mm-hmm.
positive association by having it be some hello. These are a new pair of. I mean, this could be funny now that I'm saying it, but like the common
You can do it in the right way, right?
the common email that is whatever the basic thing that we get from every other brand in the world.
Uh-huh.
Trying to sell a shit. And can I use profanity?
Yes.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I won't do too much, but I want to make sure. And that just doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? And it doesn't build that
Yeah.
as a positive association, which, I mean, our open rates were crazy. And I think you have to earn that over time and have to stand out. So those were some of the core things that I think stood out to us, where we were just trying to like have it feel like it's conversation between friends, right? When that's your
Yep.
filter, everything that follows ladders up to that. And then earning time created that positive association so that you've got this positive feedback loop over time. The way you get there, though, is trying really, really hard to make it good. So trying to come up
Mm-hmm.
with stupid ideas, but like we're spending time being like, that coupon code should be funny.
Yes.
The alt text on the image, if images
Yes.
don't load in the email, think about that, right? That's a
Mm-hmm.
detail that matters that someone's going to see. The subheader of the email, the sender. Yeah, maybe it's not allowed to play with sender name, but like people opted into our list, right? We weren't doing
Mm-hmm.
crazy, email list stuff. So like people knew it was us, but it was a funny name. It was a funny subject sender combo, right? It
Mm-hmm.
provided a little bit of levity and fun and value in this sea of doom scrolling of your email inbox, right? That is just like so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, trying to bring some of those feelings to this medium, this canvas, if I were to sound so, I don't know, um, not bold, but just kind of like maybe idiotically serious about
Absolutely.
what email is.
Yes.
But, and
It
then the
is.
fact that it then earned something that is now, whatever, 13 years later, we're talking about this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what we want to
Mm-hmm.
do with
Mm-hmm.
building a brand and with marketing, is have something that then sticks with people that then, we can talk about years later.
Yeah. So then, fast forward, the brand is growing. You sucked into the meta performance marketing stuff for a little while. And then you start to have like this shift and I assume you started having these conversations. The conversations you're posting were based on conversations you were having with your C-suite of like, oh, guys, we also need to focus on this. What was that wake up moment for you when you started realizing you're like, we're getting lost in this sea of performance marketing. Like we need to maybe shift back to some of our core values here of being the friend or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, almost running out of money and going bankrupt is a pretty good wake up call.
Sure.
And that was us. So that was us, and it was a bummer, right? It was tough, and because you kick the can down the road because you don't want to face hard truths sometimes, and you can cover up difficult things that are happening with other things that are like band-aids, right? So everyone does this in their life, but every brand does this to a certain extent to because the core issue is scary, so you can add more product categories, you can expand international, you could try to do all of these things that are growth, but like the core is withering. So it's like there's like a process, right? Of like, what is I don't know, the steps of grief, but that. And so anyways, got there, but then like the reality was the reality. Like we had to fire people, which was very unfortunate and sad and difficult, embarrassing, all of that kind of stuff. So we had to do the brand reset, but like the business reset, right? And we had raised some venture capitals, but ran out of that and couldn't raise money. But we had previously architected the business around, yeah, we could just raise more venture, and then, add to it, keep that revenue growth going to the moon, and lost that ability. So had to become a new business, like effectively a venture-backed business that had to become a bootstrapped business because it had no choice. And that was the transition. But it was very much like other indicators, right? Like how did it show up in the biz? Like ROAS could be okay, but contribution margin going down, right? Blended contribution margin. Difference between gross and net sales, right? Due to discounting going up, bigger discount rate on aggregate, year over year over year, going up and up and up. More, you look at revenue composition, more and more of it coming from paid, even on like a last click basis, but just the change over time, we were just effectively buying transactions, which were comprising our growth, right? There was no fundamental like organic growth keeping up with the paid growth kind of thing. It was like, if you just look at the chart, sure, top line's going up, organic is here or down, but all of it is just, this whole area is coming from paid and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And that in aggregate, you're like, what do I have? What is this business that I have? And obviously we're negative EBITDA margin. So like, but that was something that like we spent into for the first number of years because we're venture backed, right? We'll spend all money, put it all back into marketing. To take any profits now would be stupid. But the EBITDA margin goes from like 0 to -1 to -2 to it just keeps going in the wrong direction. All of those things in aggregate were like, okay, got to change. Completely being obsessed with these myopic short-term vanity metrics clearly isn't working for us. So what are we going to do? We are a brand, right? Like we are selling a commodity, one of the commodity of all commodities, right? Cotton shorts for men, like that is as much an afterthought product-wise as, I don't know, socks. Like just and obviously there have been brands built on socks and obviously brands built on shorts, but it's just like you can get this thing for $3 on Amazon, and I'm trying to sell it to you for 20x that. So like why? Why would someone do that? The answer was becoming less and less clear based upon our tactics of product focused, offer focused, urgency focused, right? Things that people could copy and things that become less and less effective over time the more you use this promotion, right? I mean, if you're going to positively comp a promotion you're running, it's got to be a better promotion. Margin on that promotion, right? Down, down, and down. But if you want to keep growing revenue and you have no other lever to pull other than trying to just dupe people into buying from you, it gets nasty over time. Yep. So yeah, that was like our midlife crisis.
This is the plateau that I see so many brands run into that haven't invested in this. And this, like we're talking like this $10 million, $100 million. This is probably, in my opinion, the single greatest hurdle that those brands need to get over to get from 10 million to 100 million. There's a lot of others. And we've talked about like operational challenges and things like that on this podcast. But like this is the plateau that I think sets those brands apart. What I want to do on one of these is I actually want to have you read we're going to do a reading of one of your tweets. So you'll be the CMO, I'll be the CFO, just to kind of set the stage here. Let me see if I've got that one pulled up. I've got it right here. Before we dig into this one, I kind of feel a little tight. I don't know if you're feeling tight. So I want to stretch out just a little bit here real quick.
That's funny. That camera. Oh, love it. Oh, wow. Those are classic ones. The solid light blue with the Chubbies.
All right.
Those are from what, like 13, right? Or
that's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure those are from 2013. This is my first pair.
That is like the first swim trunk run that we, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but like those were the first swim trunks we ever made. That's so cool. I haven't seen those.
Yeah. So like I said, I've been a fan for a while, so I'm excited about this. Okay, I'm gonna pull up the screen. We're gonna do a reading. I'm not an actor, but this is just fun. Anyways, you ready? Me and you.
Oh God.
You're gonna play the CMO. I'll be the CFO.
Okay, let's do it. All right. If you want me to hit a 2 ROAS or a 20 ROAS, I can do that.
What the F do you mean?
Well, it's basic math. I could toggle 3 big things and get you whatever number we want. I can spend more on retargeting or brand keywords, run discount, sales out the butt, or reduce spend. Like I can do any of those things and take ROAS to the moon.
Go on.
So the problem is that we've not evolved from the early days when we had existing untapped demand. That's why we started the business in the first place. There was demand for a product that didn't yet exist in the market. Therefore, every dollar we spent was both high ROAS and driving incremental revenue.
I'm starting to follow.
But, and here's the rub, as we've grown, we've exhausted that group's revenue. We haven't started generating new demand. What got us here won't get us where we need to go.
But we need a number showing how our investments are driving increased profitable growth.
Hey, come on, I get it. We're on the same page here. But if we're using ROAS as the tier 1 metric, our team will be incentivized to do things that actually have the opposite impact.
I'm back to not following.
All right, let me just lay it down for you here. ROAS as the only metric will drive the human tendency to do 3 things. Pull back spend on low ROAS but high incrementality, in paren, as an aside, driving purchases that would not have happened without this spend, close paren, resume, investments. Overspend on high ROAS, low incrementality tactics like retargeting or brand keywords, and prioritize messaging, creative, and sending traffic to things like discount collections or promotions or other offers or just product features, blah, blah, blah.
Here's my parenthesis. I got the better end of this deal. You've got a lot more lines than I do. Okay, that's making sense.
Good. I'm happy to hear that we're making some progress here. So our new customer cohorts, if we do above, will continue to shrink, and a larger percentage of that cohort will be acquired on discount, because our forecasts have increasing pressure on repeat revenue, which often happens when we're going through these processes. We'll push harder to get more revenue sooner from these cohorts. But because there are fewer customers coming in, and they're lower LTV to begin with, given that they were acquired on promo, we won't be able to hit our forecast without further discounting to drive them to purchase. You can see how this doesn't end well.
Gotcha. So you're saying focusing on ROAS alone makes us do things that actually slow our growth while simultaneously reducing our margin?
Yes. Clearly, we need to run promotions sometimes. Let's be real here. Come on, we're both adults. And there's some amount of retargeting that makes sense. But ROAS is an efficiency metric. We need an effectiveness metric to balance it out. Sure, we can use number of new customers, but that doesn't tell us about customer quality.
So let me see if I'm picking up what you're putting down. Putting too much focus on efficiency metrics like ROAS will incentivize team behaviors counter to our long-term goals. Therefore, we need a metric that represents the total amount of growth, aka effectiveness. But it has to represent long-term customer quality, not just new customers. Like total 180-day contribution LTV dollars from full price customers acquired.
You're my hero.
Not all heroes wear capes. If you're watching this and you would like to cast either Preston or I in your next movie, please reach out to our agent.
Love it.
Okay,
That was
but
great.
seriously,
What a good
these
idea.
are the types of conversations that you've been putting out that I really, really love, because you help people walk through the conversations that they need to have with their other C-suite or board members or things like that to make sense here. But you touch on this idea of what I call the ROAS death spiral. And this is one of the things you were asking, well, how did we help people? I wrote an article called the ROAS death spiral, which was like, hey, we're doing really well. We're spending $100,000 a month at an 8 MER or ROAS, whatever you want to look at there. And CFO comes and says, that's not good enough. Like, we need more profit. So you should aim for a 9. And they say, great, we're going to aim for a 9. And then the agency goes, well, I got to cut this campaign and this campaign because it's not there. And I've got to pull back here and here and here. And so now they're only spending 75,000 at a 9 and they're making less EBITDA. And you're like, well, that's not the goal. So wait a minute. We need to rethink about how we're doing what we're doing and why we're doing it. So
yeah, well said.
Okay. So then, like, when you think about how do you fix this then moving forward, one of the things you talked about was like the 95-5 rule. What is the 95-5 rule?
Dude, it's something that blew my mind, first of all. Let me just like tee it up and sort of like build some suspense sort of thing. Like,
okay,
I'll try. It is like the opposite of the way I operated for the first half decade of my tenure as a completely untrained marketer, knowing nothing about any of this stuff, not having an MBA. Like, yes, I read Kellogg on branding, which was awesome, but like a lot of it was like in one ear out the other, where I was like, yeah, I mean that applies to like Coca-Cola, but like not to whatever modern brands who've got data and can advertise on Facebook. Get out of here. You're a relic of the past. Anyways, the general idea is that at any given time, 95% of the people who are seeing your content, particularly paid stuff, but like content, are simply not in market for your category, not even your brand, your category at any given time. So that being the case, if we're spending effectively 100% of our marketing dollars or allocating 100% of our marketing resources, assuming that you're in market, 95% of the people, or 90, you could even then make the extrapolation, 95% of the dollars allocated are being, I don't want to say wasted, but suboptimally allocated. Because if you're not in market, and I'm trying to like if I'm just walking down, think of it like human life. If I'm walking down the street and I'm thinking about this meeting I have where I have to present to some very important person, and you come up to me, stand in front of me, and you're like, here's a necklace. Like, I'm just gonna be like, get out of my way, right? Because I got to do this other thing. Yeah. I'm not in market for this necklace. But 10 months later, 2 days later, I could be in market for a pretty sweet necklace because I'm looking to, blingify my life a little bit.
You want to look more like Mark Zuckerberg or something, right?
I want to look like Mr. Zuck. I want to look like Mr. Zuck. And that's a completely different conversation. But I was simply not in market in that moment. And that is what the reality is, that 95% of the people that were just like slamming stuff in their feeds, they're walking to that meeting. They're not trying to get a necklace, but they will, right? So what does that mean? What's the so what? The so what is that we need to behave differently, knowing that that is the truth, right? How then do we prep the 95% of people where when they do decide to come in market, and I can't force you in market, right? When they do decide to come in market for this necklace, they instantly think of me. They think of my brand. They think of the feeling that I elicited, right? And I don't want to get like into this whole like system 1, system 2 thinking, but like kind of like there's 2 ways that people think. One is like highly rational. It's like very heavy cognitive load. Like think of doing like a math problem set. And the other is, what's an example? Shit, I don't know. Buying freaking movie on Amazon Prime where you're like, it's $3.99, but I really want to see it. Okay, some emotional type purchase, right? That is the type of purchase that we generally want to engender with a brand, right? Because it's then less of a rational purchase and therefore less driven by, okay, I want the greatest feature set at the lowest cost, right? And so I'm going to survey the landscape and I'm going to pick whoever does that for me. And I don't care who does it. I just want a set of product features at the lowest. I want to get a deal. That is the opposite of what anyone is trying to do in marketing, right? So what we want to then try to be able to do is get us out of that. And you do that by establishing an emotional connection and driving this sort of an impact that is not rational, but it makes you feel good, right? So maybe it's one of those emails that we were talking about earlier, right? It sets itself apart. It's like, oh, positive association. Oh, okay. When I want a light blue pair of swim trunks, that funny email. So it doesn't only apply to paid social. It applies to everything. Made me laugh, right? I'm sure their shorts they seem pretty sweet. Yeah. Oh wow, $60, $70 for whoa. If I weren't emotionally impacted there, I'd be like, screw that. I'm going to Amazon. There are like 90 different copycats of Chubby swim trunks. You can find them anywhere. But people are still buying Chubby, right? So there's something irrational happening. Product is great. Product is better, right? There are all of these rational things. And not that we're trying to manipulate, right? That's a complete misunderstanding of what we're trying to do as marketers, right? But what we're trying to do is help people feel something great, right? Make them feel good, right? And so we're prepping that 95%. So that when they come in market, they then don't require you to throw an ad in their feed and to get them to click on it to then get the purchase. They'll just seek you out, like inbound, right? That's pretty awesome, right? Who doesn't want more of that? Who wouldn't want all of their revenue simply coming from people who search Chubbies swim trunks? I would love, and that's not going to show me any ROAS, right? Because no one's clicking on my ads, right? And therein lies this like, oh my God, wow. The final thing being, I used to spend so much time with our team and just with myself and just with the way we crafted strategy that was around, we need to test 10x more angles, right? We just need to run more tests. We just need more variance because my assumption was that I just need to be more convincing. And if I'm more convincing, I will then accomplish my goals. Whereas there are 95% of people who can't be convinced because they're just not convincible. So I was, treating a symptom that I was completely misdiagnosing, if that makes sense.
Yep. So then one of the solutions to this is, like you said, this brand versus performance marketing. And so I would say, but you almost say it's like brand through performance marketing to a point, right? But like, how would you define what type of content this looks like to people? Because it's not like like you said, it's not the old school, branding that you would think of when people are just like, it needs to be like this old, I don't know. We've done ads for people. I ran stuff for GoDaddy, and one of the things that we ended up running into. So one of the companies you talked about, Sellbrite, was acquired by GoDaddy. One of the ads that we had that was running for the longest time was not a very good looking. It was not a very good branded ad, but it was the best running ad for like 4 years in a row. And their brand team threw everything they could at trying to beat this ad that we made that was like an Excel screenshot basically, and it wouldn't convert better, right? So you're not necessarily talking about like, and let's get aside from the conversion aspect of it, but you're not talking about like old school brand that you would think of, but it's more brand of like ingratiating the customer to this emotional response of who you are and wanting to be a part of this. What is this? What does this content look like? And who makes that? Like, because it's probably not your advertising team. It could be, but it's not like, is this a social media manager? Like what does this brand content look like, and who makes that?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, first of all, I think the knock on doing this in the first place is what? It's from a content creation perspective. It's that it's expensive, right? It's that I can't test it out. It's that I can't quickly iterate, right? I just get like this one and done Super Bowl ad. I spent $1 million retaining this creative agency and then spent another $1 million to produce it. No test, no validation, and then I just run it and hope and pray, right? That's what I think of when I think of like John Hamm sitting on a couch, 3 martini lunch, traditional advertising agency, that kind of thing. That is not, what I think, modern brand building content is. And then that ladders up to like the problem with investing in brand to begin with, right? Which is more in the realm of, I don't want to waste money. Like you're telling me I'm going to spend money and have no idea if I'm going to get a return. And if I do, which is like not even guaranteed, when I'm going to get it. And you expect me to be able to come up with a forecast and have a P&L, right? I mean, that is legitimately like a reasonable problem. And
Absolutely.
that's what leads us all to think about, oh, okay, like brand, too early for me, man. I don't know. I'm not Nike. I'm not Apple. I'm not. And that, again, that's what I felt for a very long period of time. So all of that is BS. What we're trying to do is just get more people to effectively search for our brand. I think that's what a lot of this ultimately ladders up to, because those folks, revenue from branded organic search is often much higher contribution margin, much higher LTV, much less price sensitive, right? So it's driving behaviors, and this harkens back to your earlier point, which is like brand as direct response. It's brand responses, right? That then ladder to things like branded organic searches, that then ladder to things like sessions from brand organic search, that then ladder to revenue from brand organic search, right? And then that leads to an increased blended contribution margin as a larger share of your overall revenue comes from purchase behaviors like that represent, the memory structures that we've built. So then what's the content? The content, I think, I could be wrong, does four things. It earns engagement, right? Earns engagement meaning it has earned your time to where you're going to take your reputation, you're going to put your hand up in the air and you're going to click that button, and you're going to associate your reputation with sharing that piece of content, because you're then going to put it out there, right? That's doing something, right? So it's got to do that. But it can't do only that, right? Because we can play the virality game and we can just become meme accounts. How do I know this? Because I did it. We did this. We did this with Chubby, where we're like, brand awareness, cool. Let's get a lot of video views. How do we get a lot of video views? We're going to just do the meme things. We're just going to jump on every single trend. And we felt like we had a pretty good feedback loop and a good content machine. Okay, that's how we build brand. We look back a year later, no incremental sales that we could, any kind of tracking methodology could tie to it, right? So we made that mistake. And that's if you only do check box number one. Box number two, your brand has to be there, whether it be brand name, logo, distinctive sound assets, like think of any ba-da-ba-ba-ba. And then three, you got to convey what you sell. Like that you're trying to sell stuff, right? When we were going super viral, like it was not clear at all that we were selling anything. So we were just trying to make you laugh, right? So you have to do that. And I'm trying to hawk you some shorts, right? I'm trying to get you to buy some shorts. And then the fourth thing, like why you versus all of the other sellers of shorts in the world, right? Now, you don't have to hit on all those things. You don't have to be super on the nose. You don't have to do them all to the same degree, right? Because think of it as like a portfolio of my content over a monthly period of time or a quarterly period of time. I want to hit on each of these notes to varying degrees, but ultimately I want to be in balance across those four boxes over any period of time. Now, that does not require some Madison Avenue $1 million, right? It requires just knowledge of like narrative structures and how to craft a piece of content that gets someone to do those four things, and how to weave these things in these boxes that you want to check. But there is a science, there is an art. It does not cost money, and it does not take a long time, and it is not something that is not measurable, meaning like you can turn this into a machine, into a feedback loop. Who makes it? I don't know. Like it could be anyone. I tend to be somewhat biased that it's, and I mean, your camera setup is amazing and you look fantastic, but I don't think it necessarily requires it. Now, it's not prohibitive to be able to buy one of these really nice DSLRs or whatever, and to actually do work on the nice lighting and do all of those sorts of things. And that works. And some brands require it, right? Some brands just have a vibe where it has to look and feel a certain way, but that's not cost prohibitive. Like you could set this stuff up for a couple $100, right? But anyone can do it, I think. You're going to be crappy at it at the beginning, for sure, right? But the key, if you want to do it in-house, the key is just to keep going, have a way to measure it, because no one's going to see your crappy stuff anyways. It just doesn't get distribution. So that's, I think, one of the things that really helped us. But it could be the social media manager. One of the things we learned was that it's great when you have someone who can go, or at least has context on the end to end, right? Where they can go from like concept and they have an understanding of what running the media looks like, just what that run, right? Rather than, I'm just a creative, they'll do their
Mm,
thing.
yeah.
They give me the brief, blah, blah. Nothing wrong with that process at all, but its context ends up being very important because this is ultimately like a learning feedback loop where when you lack context, that's when learning slows. So to the extent you have that, but I mean, that's it. I don't mean to be pedantic, but that's what we're trying to do. And what's possible is to do a lot of it and to learn a lot, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, I don't think, because that's what people are scared of, right? Harkening back to
Mhm.
some of the points I was trying to make at the beginning.
Yeah, they're scared of the money, and I think sometimes they're just scared of the I don't know how to do that, so I'm gonna just dig into the things that I already know how to do. And I think that's kind of where I'm
Totally.
getting at. Like, what is this position? What is this title? What is this person that we're trying to hire if they're hiring somebody? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm literally having this conversation with another brand that they've done very well. They've scaled up, I want to say maybe around $20 million. And we've been pushing them. And it's like, okay, in order for you to keep growing, this is what I think you need to do. You need this. And I don't know how to direct them into like, so they're like, well, who do we hire for that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I
Mm,
know what content I want to see, but I don't know who does that. I don't know. Like, and they're not the type of founders who are like,
yeah.
they're like, okay, great. We're, founders who can create this content. They're not, they're
Yep.
definitely
Yep.
not. So then it's like,
There are
okay,
there are
well, who do they
great
turn to?
Yeah, I mean there are great agencies that help with this and that they can do that stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are people. I mean, what I would say is that if you're looking to bring it in-house, I would suggest throwing out the traditional job description and what you're looking for on the resume and focus in on just your funny friends.
Mm,
One of the people who ended up doing really amazing content was a friend from college who went the traditional consulting route because thought that that's what I need to do to be successful. Got completely disillusioned, but he was just always one of the people who made us laugh, right? Was jumping in on
mm-hmm,
those email threads, right? Knew nothing about making content, right? Had a phone, but that was it. That all could be learned, but the core of being able to do something that elicits a response for us, the response was a laugh. That person had, and that's the thing that I would focus on when you're looking for people. And you probably have more than enough of those
mm-hmm,
people in your network,
mm-hmm.
even like buddies from school, friends that you know, like from middle school, whatever. That's how I would think about it.
I like
Um,
that.
or we found like people on Craigslist who, one guy, for instance, moon getting his stand-up comedy career off the ground. So he was doing
Mm,
sets at, I don't know, 11 p.m., 1 a.m., but wasn't making a ton of money at that time,
brilliant.
so needed to pay rent. But again, had that core of being able to put something out there, see how there
Mm-hmm,
was a reaction, try to deliver this nugget of information, right, to elicit this response, but obsessed with the feedback, right? And
mm-hmm,
craft and craft and craft and iterate over time. But like that's not super obvious, especially if you have no
mm-hmm,
skills in actually creating content. But all that, can be learned relatively
mm-hmm.
easily for the tactics of actually executing on it. But anyways, those are some things that we learned that ended up working.
Yeah. I know that we're coming up on time. The last question that I want to hit on then, because you touched on this, and I want to make sure that it's very crystal clear for people, is that this is a measurable tactic. This is something you can do to say whether or not you're having an impact. And one of the things that you mentioned is, this is brand searches is a good way to look at this, but there's some nuance to that as well, right? And so, like when you're nuancing this and you're saying, okay, how do I know if we've been investing in this for 6 months now, whether it's having the impact that we want, that I could take to the CFO and say, see, we're on the right track. Let's keep pushing the pedal on this.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. I mean, so like branded organic search, you could drive that in a variety of different ways, and so it's important to strip the noise, particularly driven by short-term tactics. So like if I launch a big sale sort of thing, a lot of people are going to be searching XYZ
Mhm.
brand, right? But they'll probably be brand, and then search string will contain 50% off for it means, but that it'll still
Mhm.
be brand organic search. So there's that. Like do the obvious things, and you can do that. You can triangulate. What is still though undone is that that's like a midterm indicator, right? We still need,
Mhm.
given that most of us listening to this podcast, I would imagine, are coming from like a one day click direct response performance marketing background. We're used to getting data in session or in day. Which is why, and I don't know if you know this, but which is why I started this business Marathon, which is like this software platform to measure the predictive
I
revenue.
didn't even mention that. I didn't even see that. Okay, let's give a shout out to Marathon. Yeah, what is Marathon doing?
That's all it is. Basically, it's just sort of like, yeah, I can use brand organic search, shortcomings we just talked about. But again, it's not an immediate response indicator. So if I want to do things as a marketer that are going to build brand, I want to know right away because I want to get the data. If I'm not going to allocate capital to drive one day click ROAS, I need to get some indicator that I'm driving this other value, brand value. And so that's basically what we're trying to do is just like create this metric that is like statistical analysis of relationships between engagements that you've driven over the years and how your revenue has responded, basically trying to be the first brand measurement platform to actually connect to your actual business, right? Because that's always been the knock on brand measurement as well. It's like I get some brand awareness number and then you get the readout and you're like, so what do I do with this information, right? So that's that's the other problem. So anyways, trying to attack that issue and solve it based on some stuff that we learned at Chubbies that was really helpful for us to make this transition from obsession with bottom funnel direct response to this balanced approach of, let's call it brand and DR.
I love it. Again, there's no shortage of questions I want to ask as follow-ups, but I do want to be respectful of your time.
Part two.
Yeah, part 2 is going to be a necessary thing. If people want to work with you or follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
If you want to do the X thing or the LinkedIn thing, you could just look up Preston Rutherford. I don't think there are a bunch of people named Preston Rutherford, so hopefully that's going to be pretty good. Or just Google my name, Preston Rutherford. And then if you want to check out, if you want to check out Marathon, it's just marathondataco.com. We got to get a better URL, but it is what it is for now.
I love it. That's great. I really appreciate you jumping on here, sharing your time and your wisdom with us.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.